So the first thing to understand about this project is that it didn't look at small businesses. It was a survey of South Africa's large enterprises, and just over half the respondents were companies with fewer than or up to 1,000 employees, and the other half companies with more than 1,000 employees, with a fair amount, 10% of them, more than 5,000 employees. So it gives a very good sense of the range of South African enterprises. So the very first finding, and what we shared with you in the invitation, was that 90% of South African enterprises are on the AI journey. They either not using it, but plan to use it, or they are using it in one form or another. What's fascinating here is that a quarter of respondents say that AI is being used unofficially in the organization. In other words, not officially approved and not officially budgeted. So when it's such a high percentage for shadow AI, which is what we call it when it's not formally approved or budgeted, then you're really seeing that the company is allowing it to happen. If it was happening, you could say, against the approval of the organization, or without the sanction of the organization, then usually that number would be a lot lower. It would be an odd smattering of people, but a quarter of companies are saying that it's being used internally. So in other words, they are tolerating the use of shadow AI, because while they may not want to embark on it formally, they see the importance of their staff trying out the various tools. And only 10%, 1 in 10, are not using GenAI or plan to use it. And you'll always have the holdouts, but normally at such an early stage of an emerging technology, bearing in mind that generative AI really only exploded into the public consciousness at the end of 2022, that's an incredibly low amount of companies that are not planning to use it. Some of you may recall we did a study on the fourth industrial revolution back in 2017, 2018, and 2019, in which we asked about uptake of various emerging technologies. And at that stage, AI was being used by fewer than 10% of organizations. And when we asked whether they plan to use it, a high proportion said they plan to use it in the next 12 months. But then 12 months later, when we surveyed them again, it had only gone up to about 14% at that stage. And what we identified then as the factors holding back AI was that it was too expensive in terms of the skills as well as the tools that were then available to companies. With generative AI, those issues go out the window because anyone can use it. And it's an indication of the democratization of AI through generative AI. Then we looked at where on the AI journey companies are. And we found that more than half were still only dabbling with publicly available AI tools, so like ChatGPT, for example. But by the same token, that meant that just under half of companies were using it in a more advanced format, using it on-premise and using more advanced services in the public cloud, as well as getting their feet truly wet in the publicly available services. That's 13% using public services regularly. That's typically ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and the like. Now, this is probably the one that will interest the media the most, which is what kind of AI is in use. And the orange bars are the AI tools, or AI purposes rather, that are most commonly used. And not surprisingly, text or written content is the #1 use, with a third of respondents already using that. And again, that's the likes of ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Anthropic Claude, and other tools like that. But you'll see shortly which are the most commonly used. Some that you would expect to be commonly used are not in use at all. But then close behind that came video creation, which is surprising because the ability to create videos using AI is still fairly new compared to the text options. But clearly, companies see benefit in experimenting with video creation in AI. And then code generation. So bear in mind, these are the IT decision makers in the enterprises responding. So the IT departments of large enterprises in South Africa are taking seriously the ability to generate code using generative AI. And below that comes audio creation and image creation. We would have expected image creation to be right behind text and written content because it's now so commonly available. And GenAI chatbots, even lower than that. And then these two are really interesting because the most advanced forms of using generative AI in the enterprise, and that's neural network creation, which essentially is intended for machine learning applications in the enterprise. And then for engineering design, using generative AI for actually designing products and services, very low. But what's really interesting about those two is that when you look at the intention to use it in the future, those two have the highest intention. So when you combine current use and intended use, they're still the lowest on the scale, but the extent to which all of these tools are going to be used in the future is fascinating. This is what it looks like when we look at the intended use as well as current use of all of these tools. Chatbots are #1, and then comes text and written content, then code generation. So image creation still is quite far behind all of those. We were fascinated to see code generation so high up, which tells us that the IT departments see generative AI as a significant tool for doing their work better, as a productivity tool. And we'll see shortly how that particular word, productivity, becomes so important. And it puts into perspective the use of AI for neural networks and for engineering design. They still bottom of the pile, but that's a significant percentage. When it's above 80%, then you can tell that all of the AI tools are part of the future arsenal of the IT department of the large enterprise. And this is the one, obviously, that you'll all be fascinated by because you want to know, what are they actually using? Where are they finding their AI? And ChatGPT naturally is #1 because it's the one that launched the generative AI revolution. But really fascinating is to see GPT-4, which typically is the paid version of ChatGPT. Almost 2/3 of respondents using the paid version of ChatGPT. Now, I can guarantee if you ask this question among small and medium enterprises, that would be a lot lower, and ChatGPT would probably be used universally. But in the enterprise world, here we see the appetite for using professional versions of generative AI tools. And that then also extends to Microsoft's Copilot, which started life as Bing AI, very close to GPT-4 in 3rd place. And a little behind that comes Google Gemini, which started life as Bard. Now, interestingly, in 6th place, you see GitHub Copilot. That's the developers at work. That's the IT department playing in their own sandboxes. And then well below that comes the rest of the tools. But it's interesting to see some of them in there, like Cohere Generate, for example, Midjourney, Synthesia, because all of these require a fair bit of knowledge and skill. in order to use them. What surprised us was to see Anthropic Claude at 0%, because many of the ratings of the GenAI platforms show it to be superior to the ones that we see right at the top. But it tells you the power of branding, because there's very little branding for Claude. Whenever I mention it in a talk I give, people look at me quite puzzled, and they want to know how it's spelt even, because they haven't even heard of it. Whereas the ones at the top, the top 4, are well branded, well marketed. So the success of a GenAI platform is fairly heavily predicated on the extent to which they've been able to capture the imagination of the public and of the business world. Then this is a critical question. What is the impact of GenAI on the company? And here you should look at the purple bars to see where it's very positive, and combine it with the blue bars where it's positive. But productivity truly leaps out. 2/3 of companies say it has a very positive impact, and almost all of the rest say it has a positive impact. A tiny proportion say it's neutral. No one says that it's a negative impact on productivity. So here you truly see how GenAI is already transforming the ability of companies to become more productive, and then also, by extension, more competitive. Although being competitive is fairly far behind being productive, but still 42% very positive, and another 29% positive. That's still massive. That's more than 70% of companies saying that it has a positive impact on their competitiveness. And even turnover, a similar proportion, more than 70%, saying that it's positive, with almost 1/3 saying it has a very positive impact on turnover. And then comes logistics, sales, effectiveness, profitability, and so on. And the only time it starts to really lag is when it gets down to internal processes that are specific to human capital and human resources. So HR processes, only 11% say it has a very positive impact. Staff retention, almost no one says it has a very positive impact, although close to 30% say it has a positive impact on staff retention. And then recruitment, no one had a very positive ranking in terms of the effect of GenAI on recruitment. So the ability, for example, to use LinkedIn to recruit, which is fairly commonly used by enterprises, has not yet caught up with the ability to use AI on that platform, just for example, and certainly not in terms of having a very positive impact. But 1/3 of them still say it has a positive impact. They're just not seeing it shooting out the lights. And then a fairly high proportion on neutral on those last 3, HR processes, staff retention, and recruitment. And for those, for the first time, we see some saying that it has a negative impact. So there's 2 conclusions to be drawn from those bottom 3. The one is that HR at this stage is not an ideal arena for using generative AI. But the flip side of that coin is that there's a lot of potential if they can get GenAI right in the HR department, because it's a very small proportion that's negative. It's a high proportion that's neutral. And when you see that neutrality, you can tell that there's opportunity. Now we look at the success factors, and this is an area of particular fascination for me, because separately I'm actually embarking on an academic research project to identify success factors. So this is the first real research in South Africa to look at success factors for the use of AI. And it's fascinating to see how many of these success factors are ranked so highly. Number 1 and number 2 go hand in hand. Having a strategy for AI use, and then having a strong cybersecurity stance while using AI. So in other words, companies understand that you can't blindly go into AI. You have to have a strategy. You have to have a reason. You have to have a purpose in using AI, and you have to defend your systems very tightly when you go into the AI world. And then very close behind those, the next two are having a budget specific to AI, and then something that many organizations forget about, the culture, the corporate culture, the internal mindset that allows for it to be used. Fascinating to see that also above 90%. So those four are the keys to successful deployment of GenAI: strategy, security, budget, and culture. Not too far behind that comes data analysis skills, infrastructure, and financial resources in general. But those are almost insignificant compared to the top four. And then oversight is something that you typically tag on to those other purposes. Data availability, still strong, although a lot lower. Developer skills, it seems like it's not important, but bear in mind that's still 3/4, almost, 73% of respondents, 3/4 saying that developer skills are also key to it. My suspicion is that that will diminish in importance as generative AI gets better and as providers of GenAI solutions work closely with organizations. You'll hear more about that from Doug and Marc a little later. And the reason I'm going into such detail on this slide is that it's probably the most important slide in or the most important graph in our research, because it is really where the rubber hits the road. What does it take for AI to really work? More than half say external advisors and contractors, and less than half say hiring policy. But that's still 46% of companies that are going to ask new hires, what is your AI skill or ability or capability? Now we come to the use cases, which also, of course, is fascinating in order to see how are enterprises embracing AI? What are they using it for? And my conclusion there, when you look at the range of uses, and none of them truly standing out in terms of unanimous usage, it really is a voyage of discovery. People are still trying to find their way on this roadmap, but 2/3 say product research. So that stands out from the rest, but it's not a unanimous usage. Market research and marketing content are significant as well. People are finding them to be useful tools, bearing in mind that most GenAI still hallucinates. In other words, it makes up facts, but more than half of people still, despite that, find it useful for research as well as for content. And quite a way down comes data analysis. And part of the reason that is so low is that the GenAI tools have taken quite some time to get to the point where they are effective tools for data analysis. We, in fact, use GPT-4 for data analysis at World Wide Worx, but it took a while for us to find that it reached the level where we could use it effectively, not to replace our data analysts, but to assist them in digging up data that they might not have found manually. And then below that comes report writing. Again, that's something that you would expect to be a massive use for generative AI. But in the corporate world, there's still suspicion of using it for report writing. And that's because of the fear of your internal information being incorporated into the large language models and into training them, and your corporate secrets suddenly appearing in public. Exactly that happened with Google itself when it first gave Bard to the world. So when even the creators of these tools find it going wrong from that point of view, you can understand that corporates are pretty nervous about using it. And then social media content, relatively low, but that's because most social media content produced by GenAI is fairly bland, but it is getting better all the time. So you can expect those two to rise quite rapidly. Report writing, once there's a more secure environment where you can ring fence your own data or information, and social media content as it gets better at producing that content. The same with websites content, same with email content. I don't know how many of you have tried to use GenAI to fix your emails or to suggest responses, but in most cases, it's embarrassingly bad. So not too surprising to see that element so low down. And training material is clearly a more advanced use that companies are beginning to discover. But it's all about discovering what they can do. So this is the bottom line, my conclusion about AI from the data that we've collected from these research findings is that it's no longer futuristic. It's a reality for South African enterprises. They've embraced it, and you can see that they see it as a catalyst for innovation and growth, especially when you look at that slide about productivity. You can see that the South African enterprise appreciates the significance of GenAI. Thank you. I hope you find that interesting. We'll take questions after Marc and Doug have spoken, but I'd now like to invite Marc O'Regan, Chief Technology Officer of Dell Technologies for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, to give us his perspective on this GenAI revolution and on the roadmap that we produced today.
Thank you very much, Arthur, and some fantastic findings there. Just while I bring up my slide deck, a couple of things I'd like to certainly note on this. Fascinating to see some of the things that you spoke about. 45% are not just looking at AI, but 24% of that are actually using shadow IT, which we saw nearly 15 years ago with the emergence of public cloud platforms and the adoption of public cloud functions. But what was the most interesting statistic from what you took us through there, Arthur, was 11% using AI officially. So this is telling us that the market, the industry are looking at particularly generative AI, which is one significant element of the artificial intelligence camp, the other being analytical AI. 11% using AI officially can only scale. That trend is going to start going upward, and it's certainly aligning with what we're seeing in the industry. And I think the word that you use, that demographic use of artificial intelligence right across the continuum of organizations, of businesses and society, we're very, very much seeing that. It's exciting that the future is here and anyone can use generative AI. That's not to say that it's an easy and simple technology. What sits in behind generative AI and analytical AI and all AI is complexity, but it's the democratization and the simplification of that complexity that is going to, we believe, bring it to the masses and have that 11% scale up to 85, 90%, we believe, over the next 36 months. And that 50-50 split, Arthur, that you talked through as well is extremely interesting to us, where we look at a little over 50% using public clouds, and in and around the late 40s, early 50s, I think it was that you'd said, who are interested in more advanced features of generative AI, which tells us again that Dell Technologies' area of interest, which is in the democratization of AI, but using AI in a controlled way and in a way that can make AI yours as an organization. That more advanced use of AI, I think you alluded to it being that level of control in the hands of the user, in the hands of the creator of the AI, which are the organizations, the businesses, organizations, and even the governments and societies. So that's very, very much in line with what we're building. What we're seeing in industry is that organizations really want to embrace generative AI, but want to do so on their terms and want to have a level of control over artificial intelligence as they bring it into and drop it into their ecosystems. The use cases you mentioned align very, very closely to what we're seeing as well. Code generation very much being a productivity tool, as are other use cases. We can see generative AI landing into ecosystems to drive productivity up. Chatbots, in particular digital humans, I think, are extremely interesting to us. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And what's interesting around the neural network side of things, and I'll leave it at this, is that generative AI is actually built on neural nets with transformers taking all of what the neural networks are interpreting and bringing it back to us in a language that we can understand. So neural networks have been with us for a long, long time, sitting under that canopy of what we have called AI for decades, and are now bringing us the kinds of experiences that we're seeing very much at industry today. So thank you for that, Arthur. They were fantastic findings, and thank you for sharing. So I guess from a Dell technology point of view, first and foremost, we know AI, we know it very well. We've been working on and with AI for decades. We developed our first commercial AI system for customers, over a decade and a half ago. And we've been building architectures for far longer than that, with customers like NASA and Boeing, Wells Fargo, TGen, who are a non-for-profit organization with whom we helped decode the whole genome. So we took the whole genome and the cost of building such from $1 million down to under, I think it's about $320 today. Back in that time, it took us 45 days to decode a whole genome. Today, we can do it in pretty much under about 2.5 hours. So these are the kinds of things that we would have been very, very involved with. From a NASA perspective, our work on artificial intelligence was to land the rover module onto its designated surface in Mars as part of the Curiosity program. With Boeing, we were pulling telemetric and metrologic data from in-flight aircraft to make sure that it was flying efficiently and taking its passengers safely to their destination. And with Wells Fargo, we went through everything from biometric into looking at digital humans, as we are doing today. So, AI is not new to us. We have over 1,200 individual AI programs running right across the breadth of Dell today. And this is using AI ourselves. And we build AI into Dell products technologies, into the technologies that our customers and our partners consume. We build AI onto Dell technology platforms using end-to-end technology platforms in order to drive AI. And of course, we use AI, as I mentioned, for Dell Technologies uses and use cases ourselves. And over the last 3 years, we've invested a little above $7.5 billion in research and development of artificial intelligence and nascent technologies, which is, we believe, a critical element to our commitment and our go-to-market. So GenAI in particular has brought great opportunity, we think, but it also brings a significant risk, which you also pointed to there, Arthur. And this risk scales up and down the technology stack and deep into the AI ecosystem. And it's something that we have a laser focus on when we are bringing AI with our partners and with our customers into their own ecosystems. From a technology perspective, we see risk in skills to develop and deliver AI effectively into your respective business or organization, and how you harness AI appropriately and harness the appropriate technology in order to scale it across your business. From an ecosystem perspective, the risk we see is in exposing your business or organization to elements and entities that can hurt you, critically harm your business or your organization in a potentially catastrophic way. And these are the two areas that we concentrate on moving our customers away from, while taking AI and moving you into scaling artificial intelligence in a way that will not hurt you, that will keep you safe, that will allow you to scale, and that will give you a level of sovereignty that we believe, by and large, cannot be found on public platforms and elsewhere. So we see a gap in the industry and a differentiation that can help industry and customers and partners to scale AI in a very different way to just going onto a public entity or platform and, you know, looking at GPT or Bard or any other public platform in its raw format. We see the potential of AI, what it brings to our world, but we also recognize that while our customers want to explore it and exploit AI functions and models in order to gain insights that can help them achieve and win in their domains, that this is something that's important. So this is where we built the full stack that you can see in front of you. So of course, when we talk about full stack, we immediately think about developers. Well, a full stack, as I describe it here, possesses the end-to-end software and hardware technology, as well as the necessary skills to integrate, in this instance, AI models into web applications seamlessly, in order to take AI into your ecosystem seamlessly and scale it seamlessly and scale it securely. And so we have gone and built an AI test engine system for our customers in South Africa and in other places across the EMEA region, so that they can create not just an AI capability, but their AI capability in a way that makes sense to them, to their organization, to their industry, so you can get around the corner and move ahead and stay ahead of your competition and solve the critical problems or experience the exciting technologies of the future today, and do so in your terms. And there's three key features that I believe is utterly differentiated in this platform and in the industry today, I think, which will allow us to maintain control over your data, your information as you extract it from the data, and the patterns that you will use to create and observe your AI while building and scaling it over time. So the platform possesses these three things, and that is scale on your terms, sovereignty on your terms, and security. It's what I call the 3 S's. This should and will, we believe, allow our customers to create APIs, to connect to databases, to connect to other elements, and design user interfaces that leverage the power of generative AI, ultimately enhancing, we believe, the application functions and their user experiences. And that's what I mean by a full stack that you see here. So it's taking our conversations with you, a customer, with you, a partner, out of the boardroom, out of the workshops, and actually onto the platform, so you can test and scale all of those use cases in a way that you see fit. We also give you exposure to both indigenous or local and global partners. So partners who are specific in certain elements and parts of artificial intelligence, but also exposure to some of our global partners like Microsoft, like Intel, like NVIDIA, like AMD, and a number of other partners as well. So when we talk about, and Arthur talked about neural networks, they're extraordinarily complex. What you're looking at here is a neural net. You can see them in their different clusters. They're blue clusters, orange and green clusters. They're extraordinarily complex. And there's tens, if not hundreds of millions of neural nets in a standard network configuration. When we're talking about some of the platforms that we talk about on the public domains, ChatGPT, Bard, Hugging Face, Mistral, there are billions and billions of neural networks and endpoints that the neural networks interrogate in order to bring back what it believes you should see when you prompt engineer or query the AI to go and find and build you something. So this is exciting, but it's also risky. What Dell do is we democratize and we simplify that complexity, and we will take foundational models or pre-trained models, models that have already been exposed to the financial industry or to the healthcare industry or to the manufacturing industry or elsewhere, and take those models from these public domains and bring them underneath your firewalls, and then allow you to ingest data, knowledge based on your industry and based on your organization, and do so on your terms. And that's exactly what we built here in EMEA in our Customer Solution Center. At the left-hand side, you see the endpoints. On the right-hand side, you see the engineering. The endpoints we tap into using APIs and connectors, and we bring information into the engine. We land those pre-trained models that are already have been exposed to financial markets, for example, and land them onto this architecture. That architecture can handle analytical or generative AI use cases. And you can see the three main areas that it looks into: the management of the architecture and infrastructure, the inferencing of the models, and then, of course, the training of the models. And as our customers on board, we have the scale and the capacity. Once we understand what it is that they want to do and the level of scale and availability that they need in order to cater for all of their needs. So whether this is a small to medium business interested in looking at AI and how we can scale AI across your ecosystem, or whether these are some of the largest banks and healthcare providers and energy providers in South Africa, we have a technology architecture that can cater for all of them. We have a back-end networking technology as well that can look at and support a fairly robust use case very, very, very quickly. So the test platform is sitting here in front of you. You can see it's a high level. We won't go into it in too much technical detail, but needless to say that the network objectives are more than met. It is a full Ethernet backbone and front end. So we have at the back end, 800 gigabit fabric backbone, and the inter-rack connectivity for this artificial intelligence test engine is 400 gig, which gives us more than enough speed and capability in order to scale your AI objectives. In terms of those objectives, we can do POCs based on customer requirements, or MVPs. We can provide a sandbox or a secure and safe area where you can actually develop your use cases. We can demonstrate those use cases, both your own use cases as you build them on the platform, or you can tap off our own use cases where we built demos and inserted them onto the platform. These can give you ideas where you can scale your AI. We can showcase what's already been created, and we can give you exposure to all of our industry partners, as you can see here. One of the most important things is the depth and scale of the technology architecture that we've actually built. So these environments here that you're seeing, developer environments, data scientists on the left-hand side, and IT administrators, ultimately, we can bring those entire ecosystems together in order to create what we call an ML ops layer, which is what you're seeing here. The reason that we've shown you this fairly complex diagram is fairly straightforward. We can give you the capability that goes right down to the engineering, down to the compute, network, and storage in the MNO layer, and allow you to land that into your ecosystem based on your experiences on our test engine. That gives you a framework to have the compute architecture, the orchestration and automation, the an analytics tool and ingestion capabilities, so you can develop models and build data-centric applications that can help you win. So this is what we mean when we say a full stack. And the beauty of this full stack is that it's completely diverse in the sense that we can give you insight into and observability of an NVIDIA framework, an AMD framework, an Intel framework. So fully diverse, fully democratic. And we can land that into that ecosystem and scale it. So for example, if we come to the platform, we have customers who want to build GPU as a service for their organization, for example. We can help them by building that platform with something like Run AI, who are a company that we work with, who give us that ML ops layer that allow us to create GPUs, that allow us to virtualize and segregate those GPUs into right down to the user level. Each user has its own GPU usage, and then it can connect up into the orchestration layer, in which case here we're seeing is Rancher. If we have a customer who is also testing simultaneously or very closely after this customer is testing, who actually want a little more advanced technology capability at the ML ops layer, who want to bring in something like chargeback, then an organization that we work with, like ClearML, could replace Run AI in that space. We have another organization who don't use Rancher, but use OpenShift, we can bring OpenShift into the configuration as well. So I think you can see what we built here is a framework for a highly scalable, highly flexible architecture, which allows us to not only test your use cases, but to be able to use RAG augmentation, the ability to be able to tap into your databases, into your data sets, and pull knowledge from your ecosystem and blend that knowledge with the pre-defined and pre-trained model that you pull down from a public platform onto your own technology architecture in order to build your AI on your terms. And the kinds of capabilities you get are like this.
We don't have a sound, Marc.
So we don't have sound there. That's fine. This was a digital human that we built called Clara that could be introduced into any customer or any partner organization right across South Africa. These kinds of technologies can help us build technology in the data center by keeping us within the guardrails of an optimal build of a PowerScale or PowerFlex configuration, for example, or they can help you during your recovery periods in hospital, within your hospital room. You could have your own digital agent or digital assistant giving you updates on your progress through your recovery plan. The opportunities are endless. So looking forward, we see AI, and in particular generative AI, emerging and joining the neural network limelight. This is just the beginning. Artificial intelligent agents will scale and generative AI will develop and mature. They will join the world of edge, and they will look at taking the thinking tasks, and leveraging those thinking tasks on the behest of humans. So we'll see generative AI make its way into robotics, into autonomic systems, and we have built the computational power and horsepower required in order to be able to drive them at your scale. So we invite you to test on the engine, and we've spent a long time building out this capability. We hope that it excites you. It certainly has excited us. We can tell you that we've had 6 premium tests on this platform. 5 of those 6 customers who have tested have already invested in the technology. The 6th is still testing, and we invite you to be the 7th. So please do join us on and let us know if this is something that you would like to do. Back over to Arthur. Thank you.
Thank you, Marc. That was fascinating, and the most fascinating aspect of all for me was just how many moving parts it takes to get AI right in the enterprise. And also how vast the partner ecosystem has to be to truly take advantage of the full power of AI in the enterprise. On that note, I'd like to hand over to Doug Woolley, GM of Dell Technologies Southern Africa. Doug?
Thanks, Arthur. Thank you. So, yeah, how do we make this real? I think, we've seen all the models, and you've seen the complexity that is evolving around AI. And also, I think what we're seeing is it's evolving at a pace that is quite scary. What you'd have seen Marc present is that Dell definitely is trying to drive a democratized type of approach to AI. So very open in terms of the partnerships we're working with. So there's no real lock-in. Talked about some of the fundamental things that you have to look out for, specifically security. But I think at a South African level, we want to obviously accelerate this whole process. And what we've done and why we've invited Marc in is the first thing that we're offering customers at that wonderful, price point called free is this, test environment where we will work with customers to build a POC around their specific AI requirements. Now, there's only one proviso to that, and that'll also get customers onto this AI journey much quicker, is we are providing customers, again, at a wonderful price point of free, what we call an accelerator workshop around AI. So that is mapping what their AI strategy looks like with Dell specialists, and then to basically work on the models that we'd want to go and test and play in that playpen that Marc has gone and created. And then at an executive level, we've also gone and defined a whole set of executive briefing centers focused around AI. So those can either happen in a virtual space or in our briefing centers across Europe, the US, and in the Middle East. So we really want to make this very accessible to customers. And the way that you would engage with Dell on this is either through our partner ecosystem, all our resellers in South Africa, or secondly, through your Dell account manager, if you have one. And we really want to encourage customers to really start the journey. I think you would have seen the apprehension, just by virtue of the stats that Arthur has put down, 43% looking to get there. Well, at Dell, what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that you can start that journey today in South Africa. So, I'm very excited to look at the platform. And again, I think, that has probably been one of the prohibitors, is there is a cost if you're going to try and do that on your own infrastructure or in the cloud providers today. And Dell's got that platform for you with all the various players that are in play in this AI world or generative AI world. So, I mean, that's the story from us. And, looking to get as many customers as possible, onto this journey as quickly as possible.
Thanks so much, Doug. The word that keeps cropping up is journey. This is still a journey. And this study was the beginning of measuring and mapping out that journey. And we'll keep pursuing an understanding of where companies are on that journey in the coming years. On that note, I'd like to open the floor to questions. So ideally, put yourself on video and put up your hand, or put a question in the chat box, and we'll take them. Tell us who the question is directed at, and we'll send the question to that person. Any questions? I'm sure there have to be questions. We've answered a couple of questions in the chat box. If you want to put a question in the chat box, you're welcome. Anybody? Lebogang, you've unmuted yourself. Did you want to ask a question? If there are no questions from anybody, am I missing anybody's question? Lisa Comans has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? Are there still concerns regarding plagiarism? Please, can you talk to this? No problem, Elise. We'll take your question. Marc, what is your take on the question of plagiarism?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lisa. Yes, there is concerns around plagiarism. I think we're getting much better at identifying plagiarism, but it is one area where we can look at how we use AI in order to control AI, if that makes sense. So, so it's really around understanding what it is you're reading, what it is you're writing, what it is you are talking to, whether it's a human, whether it's a non-human, whether it's a digital human, All of these things are starting to become extraordinarily important to us now. Just about 2 months ago, I spent 10 days in Italy with a deep tech organization where we were looking at the security and the integrity of point-to-point messages. Now, while this may seem a million miles away from AI, it's actually right at the heart of AI. When we touch an AI, when we start to speak with an AI, or when we consume an AI, or what an AI function is telling us, we need the confidence to be able to move that content forward. So when you look at generative AI, it's interested in text, it's interested in images, and it's interested in video. They're the real areas that it's interested in. So whether you're consuming that, or whether you're asking the AI to help you create that, there's a number of different security elements that we're very interested in. Malware is one, misrepresentation is another, and plagiarism, of course, is another. So yeah, it falls definitely into that security and trust domain. And how we handle that really is by looking at asking an artificial intelligent agent to interpret the content as it comes in and is correlated and comes into us prior to actually consuming that content, to make sure that it has a level of authenticity that won't get us into trouble further down the line. Arthur, comments?
Thanks, Mark. Great answer. If there are no further questions, if you do have a question, put up your hand while I make my closing comments, and we can still take a question. Chris Dredger says that he heard someone like an AI used to building an aeroplane while you are flying it. So the question is, do you feel South Africa can hold its own in terms of early adoption of AI use cases, outcomes, etc.? Doug, that sounds like a perfect question for you.
So I definitely do believe we can hold our own, and there are a number of organizations that are driving, AI initiatives. I think what we're trying to do at Dell is effectively accelerate that. So, that is, I think, the core component. It's about the resources that are available at an infrastructure level and a resource level, people, and the quicker we can effectively, in a way, democratize that, the quicker we can, accelerate. And I do think South Africans have the capability and the IP to really do, the best we can and lead in a number of fields.
Great, thanks, Doug. Anyone else? Lisa wants to know on the issue of deepfake AI generated videos that are being used to scam people. How can this be confronted? I'm happy to comment on that myself. There is a massive industry-wide initiative to combat this kind of thing. And all the big tech companies involved in AI had a meeting at the Berlin Security Conference in February, which is the biggest security conference in the world. And they signed an agreement to build watermarks and identification of AI-generated content into all their tools. There are obviously still ways around that, but the industry is working hard on trying to come up with a solution to exactly that issue. Mark, do you want to comment on that?
I do, Arthur. Yeah, we've done this already. As a matter of fact, at the Office of the CTO, I led up a program where we looked at exactly that. So the concept of watermarking a database transfers into using neural networks, and that's how it works. So what we're doing is injecting a signature, Lisa, into the neural net at a fidelity where it doesn't disturb the neural net itself. So part of integrity isn't just the content that is coming in from all of those, trillions of data points that GPT goes out to fetch our data back from, but it's also the neural networks that sit down underneath us. And they could be public neural networks, or they could be even our own neural networks sitting underneath our own firewalls. But what we've done is created a capability where we inject that signature at a fidelity that doesn't interrupt the neural network, so allows it to keep powering on, because they can be very, very delicate, highly powerful, but very delicate. And we've done this, and in the instance where a bad actor or misinformation or malware actually enters the neural network, it in near real time trapped on an area of the neural network. It's watermarked on that neural network as well. So we've actually already done this. We've been working with a couple of media companies. I'm certainly at the table with some of the larger media companies talking about what and how we've done this. And I'm happy to share some more information offline with you, Lisa. But as Arthur says, yeah, this is an industry-wide problem where we're trying to get our heads together. But to Doug's point, we're trying to get around the corner and get ahead of these kinds of problems. And we're certainly doing that. We did this probably around this time last year, to be honest.
Great, thanks, Marc. And then a really interesting question from Brendan Lotz asking about legislation and regulation around AI being lacking, and how, when governments wake up, will this negatively impact the space, and how are companies like yourselves developing AI tools while also considering potential regulation and legislation? I think that's one for you as well, Marc.
That's a brilliant question from Brendan. It's huge. Legislation and regulation. Where do I start with this? When we built public cloud platforms way back in the late noughties, it was very, very easy for the United States of America to erect the biggest public cloud platform technologies and scale them nearly straight off the bat, really, really easily, really quickly, because they have 50 federated states. And even though we have bylaws in all of those states, they ultimately go up into one federated law. It's very different once you cross the waters. Once you come into different domains. In the EMEA region, which I'm responsible for, and I have reason to know this because I've researched it deeply, there are 146 different variants. There aren't 146 different countries, but 146 different variants around legislation, regulation, compliance that we need to observe. Now, when you think about that, that's not one, that's 146. And if you're a bank and you're asking AI to go and solve for a problem or create an opportunity at a global scale, that AI will do what AI does. It will go to as many data points as it possibly can in order to pull you back that information. And what we're doing, again, is looking at how we keep the AI that we're asking to scale across an ecosystem within the guardrails of legislation and regulation as we ask it to go away and commit to and execute its task. This is not an easy thing to do, but generative AI can help here. If you have a generative AI at the back end, looking at pulling all of the documentation around PCI, PSD2, which is a banking regulation, when we look at all of the things around, whatever published documentation is available for whatever legislation or regulation that you're obliged to comply to, if we can ingest that into a generative AI engine and have that sitting in behind an analytical AI that is going out and asking all of these, or even a generative AI function, then that generative AI at the back end will make sure that as you go and ask these questions or create these opportunities, that you stay within the respective guardrails of your legislative or regulation obligations. So we're asking an AI function to mind and guard an AI engine as it goes to build your capability for you, is the best way I can say it.
Thanks so much, Marc. Appreciate that. And I think the audience also appreciates it. We've run out of time, but if anyone wants further comment, please feel free to reach out to us. I think you all know how to get hold of Doug, as well as myself, and we will send out the presentation from today, and Doug will be sending out his analysis or his take on the findings of the project. Thanks so much for joining us. It was great to be unveiling yet another groundbreaking research project. Thank you to Dell and Intel for making it possible. And thank you to the media for joining us. Have a great day, a great week, and a great AI journey, everyone.